Hey everybody, how's it going? My name is Drew Creel. I'm a guitar player. I live in Nashville, Tennessee, and you are watching Shred Sessions. This is episode 9, and I have my good friend Brandon Adams. He's a guitar player,
Hello.
a mixing engineer, a multi-instrumentalist, vocalist, producer. There are some knowledge bombs that are going to be dropped on you today, certainly in this episode, so don't sleep on it. Feel free to hang out with us as we kind of navigate through all things music, heavy music, and all sorts of other topics. So thanks for joining us. Just before we begin, if you like this show, if you like Shred Sessions, please like this video and drop a comment if there's something that we talk about that you relate to or that you enjoyed. Please comment below. Share your thoughts with us. We'd love to hear them. So, Brandon.
Yeah.
This is long overdue. Thank you for doing this, man.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
I'm loving it, man. So, I guess like we've known each other for probably
5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah, definitely before the pandemic. I think when I met you, you were working for Gibson Guitars. You were So not only do you play music, you can also build guitars.
Well,
and fix them.
That's giving me a little bit too much credit, but yeah, I was working at the Gibson Custom Shop. Yeah, back then.
That's amazing. So, I mean, that's kind of what I love about you is you have this kind of DIY spirit.
Yeah, very much.
If there's something that you want to know how to do, you like source the knowledge on how to do it and you learn. And I think that's just really impressive overall, just as a character that you are, man.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, that's a big part of how I've learned pretty much how to do anything that I do.
Yeah.
It's just kind of, I don't know how this works. I'm going to see if someone else does it, if I can figure out how to make it happen.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, you're very good at what you do. And I got to hear firsthand, your skill set in the mixing desk, because you mixed the Xylon record, Heights of the Far North. I'll just grab the copy behind me here. So this record, which is a kind of a death metal record, and you did such a great job on this, man. You brought a lot of clarity and depth to the mix, and I just had a great experience working on this with you. And we're going to be working on another kind of a more post-rock record that I'll announce here at some point.
Yeah, I'm excited about that one too. Yeah.
Yeah, that's going to be great. Jordan McGee is drumming on that record. He's the drummer for Advent and Slow Shiv, which Slow Shiv is going to be on the show later in October, so that'll be fun.
Nice.
That's a band with Dan Diaz, who's also a producer.
Yep. I mixed some stuff for him.
Jordan Smith. From Diarrhea Planet. So
they're cool.
They are cool.
Stuff.
Their new band is sick, and I can't wait to talk to them. But my first question, man, is the flooding in North Carolina. You're from North Carolina. Is it the Black Mountain area?
I'm from Charlotte originally, but my parents live in Black Mountain, and my sister lives in South Asheville. So they were definitely
which
impacted.
Are two totally devastated areas right now.
Yeah.
So how is your family doing?
They're safe. My parents were fine in their neighborhood. There was a mudslide, but they're fine.
So their home is like intact?
Yep, their home's fine. They just couldn't get out of their neighborhood for a couple days. My sister was stuck in her apartment complex because it flooded, but she's on the 3rd floor, so she was safe. But as of yesterday, I talked to them, and they still don't have water. My parents don't have power, and my sister finally got power back on Thursday, I think. So cell phone coverage has been spotty, but luckily they have a lot of neighbors around them that are caring for them and bringing supplies by, and National Guard is there helping doing stuff. So they're not as bad off as other people in that area, thankfully. But it's still one of those things that you don't really prepare for. You don't really expect it to happen. You don't really get a hurricane in the mountains very often.
Yeah, it's so strange, man. And it's got to be the most catastrophic thing that's happened since Katrina, I guess, would be the last like hurricane related thing.
Yeah.
That I'm aware of. But
yeah, Katrina was pretty terrible. This seems to be more devastating only because it's over a broader area.
Yeah.
And it's an area that's even less ready to respond to flooding. So,
Right.
it's pretty crazy to see that.
It's tragic.
Happen.
You know, the clips that I've seen on like social media are heart-wrenching, man. Seeing the brown, nasty water just pile driving entire towns, you know, and cars and all kinds of things. I can't even really describe what I've seen. You just have to go watch these videos. I mean, the Appalachian region it's kind of hard to get to in some ways because of the infrastructure there. There's only a couple different highways. I know part of the highway
collapsed.
Highway 40, and I think it's on the outbound way, so you can't really leave Asheville, or at least they couldn't for some time. And I think they're saying it's going to be until like next fall that they're going to be able to fix that road. What have you heard?
That's the projection. I don't know if they're just playing it safe, but you know, that's such a huge thoroughfare to get in and out of that part of the state and into Eastern Tennessee. Like thousands of people usually use that every day. So I imagine that's probably a priority to get fixed quickly. Yeah. It's also part of like the missile defense network of the United States. So,
oh yeah.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah, so, you know, it might be kind of important to be able to have that operational.
Absolutely. Yeah, they're going to need that.
Yeah.
Dude, have you been following any of like the kind of more conspiratorial things? Like maybe this was like a planned thing, or there's lithium mines and
there is a lithium. Well, there's a lithium source in Kings Mountain, North Carolina. That's close to where my grandma lives. Mm-hmm. And there's been a lot of local pushback on that, like being mined actively, but I mean, I could see that being a land grab kind of thing if it's not, you know, it's something that it's kind of convenient, I guess, that's the whole town got wrecked. And
yeah, and I've heard things like, well, the town is destroyed, they're not going to allow people to rebuild there, the government's going to like seize control of some of these areas.
Yeah.
And people will just be forced to find a new place to live, you know, like that's just what I've heard.
You know, there's some precedent for that kind of thing being the case where if something's deemed unsafe, or, you know, rebuilding efforts are taking too long, I mean, people are going to relocate if their infrastructure is wrecked, you know, I mean, so yeah, I mean, I could see it being a way to force people out, or, you know.
Yeah, maybe they're taking advantage of the opportunity of the disaster, which is sickening.
Yeah.
But
yeah, you hope not, but crazier stuff's happened, right? So.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And I think most people, you know, whether you're on the left or the right side politically, people are just trying to figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just unfortunate that disasters like this are kind of the thing that can bring people together. We can't, as a country, unite, you know, behind anything positive. Like, anyway, I'm kind of going in a lot of different directions conspiratorially, but I think it's even maybe a shame to call it a conspiracy if that's what is happening. And I think people should do some reading and do some research and look into what's going on over there. And but before you do any of that, like, help people, like send some resources, gather canned food, water. Do you have any suggestions for how people can help that you've heard from your parents? Like,
I know that there's been like Red Cross drop-off sites. There's some here, like locally in Tennessee and other areas. There's plenty of NGO, not non-government organizations that are doing material collection, that are bringing things in. So that's probably the best way. You know, water is really important for people to have. My parents have gotten, I think, like a pallet of water delivered to them at some point.
Oh, that's
recently.
good.
Or, like
That's good
people
to
are
hear.
dropping stuff off in their neighborhood. That's the main thing. Yeah, I think just donating stuff if you can
Yeah.
is helpful. I mean, it's hard to travel there if you wanted to help anyway, so I think doing stuff from a distance is probably the better route.
Yeah,
So,
for sure. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's a good suggestion, man. Well, I want to get to music and stuff like that,
Yeah.
but I just felt like it would be important for us to talk about that, since maybe your family will watch this episode, and just know that we're praying for you guys. We care about you, and we'll be donating something. At least like my wife and I will be helping out in the small way that we can. So
well, thanks for asking about him.
yeah, totally, man. So I'm always interested in origin stories when it comes to musicians, because everyone has their own unique story about how they got involved in music, and particularly like hard rock and metal and You're a prog guy.
Yeah.
Sure. So how did you start playing music? Take us back to how that all started.
Okay, yeah. So my grandfather on my mom's side always played guitar and sang, and he wrote songs and stuff like that. And so when I was interested in learning to play anything, he took that opportunity to get me an instrument. So he let me use a ukulele first. I think he already had it. He may have bought it for me, but so I started on ukulele, and I quickly moved to mandolin as my like next instrument up.
How old were you around this time?
I was 11, I want to say, when
Okay.
I started playing. And then I played mandolin for a little while, probably, I don't know, 5 or 6 months. And then he gave me a nylon string guitar. When I was finally it was like my hands got stronger over time. Like I gradually stepped up to guitar. And then, in this whole period of time, my dad started showing me, he was like, oh, you're playing guitar now. I need to like show you the classic stuff that's going to make you a good guitar player. So, he started showing me Rush and Kansas.
What a great band to start with, dude.
and Yes, and all the prog rock classic stuff. And so I think one of the things that he wanted me to do before I got an electric guitar was like start learning a Rush song. So I picked a Rush song, and I picked La Via Strangata, which is like one of the harder guitar songs to learn by Rush.
Gosh, brutal.
But like I got through the first section of it. I think it's like I don't know, 8 or 9 minute song probably. So I got through the first section of it, and he was like, okay, we're good. And then I got my first Strat, and
that's awesome.
the rest
man.
is history.
Dude.
From there.
Starting off with Rush, man.
Yeah.
That's some heavy duty stuff. Have you watched any of the Rush documentaries?
Oh yeah.
They're so good, man.
Yeah.
And like they seem like such a positive band. Like,
Yes.
and the spirit of music, like I just get so excited about making music and creating art when I learn about stories of bands like that.
Yeah, they're one of those
know?
few that like actually respected each other as members.
Yeah, they're like
they were
brothers,
actually
man.
friends. Yeah. I mean, there was creative tension, I'm sure, at times, but like they came through it, and they stayed together until Neil retired.
Yeah.
Like that was the reason they stopped, and it was just like, hey, he's ready to stop. He's got arthritis and stuff, like he's done. And there's something really beautiful about that relationship. So
Well, they made like what 30 records or something like that.
yeah, something like
I'd
that.
say that's a good a body of work with which to like retire on.
Yeah, like 40 years of music. That's insane.
I got to see him on the Snakes and Arrows tour. God, this would have been like 2007, I think, something around that time, and it was just phenomenal to see those guys play, and it was awesome. Love Rush, man. So were you, from that point, did you get more into like heavier music, or were there other bands shortly after that really inspired you to like, I want to play music with my, I want to play music throughout my life,
I was kind of, I don't want to say sheltered, but my parents kind of limited the music that I could listen to.
Yeah.
And I'm honestly kind of glad that they did that. In a lot of ways, like most of the stuff we listen to is just like, Christian radio and worship music and stuff like that. Through my childhood until I started then I got Rush, that was a brain melter when I started listening to that stuff.
For sure.
But yeah, there's other bands of that era that were like Christian adjacent, like Switchfoot and Reliant K and stuff like that. And there's like some of the Christian metal things like I'm blanking on some names now.
Oh, there's so many.
1,000 Foot Crutch and stuff like that. So that was probably like Skillet,
Love Skillet.
That was like the introduction for me into like heavier stuff. There's like, Evanescence and things like my dad loves Evanescence. And so
Amy Lee.
Yeah, she's killer. But yeah, it wasn't really until I went to college that I started like getting into more like contemporary like stuff that was actually happening right now.
So what year were you like in college, like listening to that kind of music?
I went to college I started at Appalachian State in 2011.
Okay.
When I graduated high school. I forgot something actually. I discovered Coheed and Cambria in high school. Yeah, dude. So I dated a girl in high school who was like into all like emo stuff and like more, kind of like maybe some metalcore kind of stuff.
Kind of like some scene kind of bands.
Yeah, scene stuff. Yeah. So she kind of introduced me to Coheed and Cambria. Just Welcome Home, like just that song, because that was what everyone knew. And I just deep dove, like my first year or two of college, I deep dove on their whole discography up to that point and listened to all the stuff that I hadn't heard yet. And that was the kind of thing that gelled with me the most. Where I was just like, okay, I see like the like kind of heavier prog side of things that I really enjoy.
Yeah.
And I resonated with the way Claudio writes songs and like the way he uses his voice and the way he writes like the story into the song. And that's a huge thing for me. I've realized over time that like, that's why it resonated, because I love concept albums and their entire discography is a massive concept. So
yeah. Did you get into the comic books that they put out too?
I have most of them. Yeah. I don't have the most recent ones, but yeah.
Sick, dude.
Yeah.
Gosh. Yeah. That Coheed and Cambria makes me think of bands like At the Drive-In. And wasn't there another? Yeah, what band came after At the Drive-In that has some of the same members? Man, I'm blanking.
I can't think of them either.
Thomas Pridgeon was their drummer for a brief time.
Yep.
You guys can comment below and
tell us
definitely
we're idiots for
shame me for not remembering this band, but At the Drive-In was sick during that era. So yeah, that's awesome, man. I was into Coheed a little bit, but I didn't go nearly as deep as you did. With their stuff. I think I was Dream Theater big time, like around that time.
I listened to some Dream Theater too, and that's another one that I kind of my dad and I connected on. That he I think he found Liquid Tension Experiment first.
Oh,
and we listened to that stuff, and then I think that bridged into Dream Theater maybe.
Favorite Dream Theater record?
I mean, it's got to be like Octavarium, probably.
Octavarium? Yeah.
Just because that's the one that like I first really listened to all the way through, but the older stuff still is sick too.
Older stuff is cool too.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. For me, it was first it was the album Awake.
Yeah.
And then shortly after I devoted my life to Dream Theater, not Awake, but not Images and Words. I'm trying to think of the album. It came out in like 2006. It's like the really heavy record. Man, this is another one. My brain's not working.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I can think of us like what one of the songs sounds like.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an awesome record. It's like got the black cover with the eye in the middle of it. Man, I might have to edit this part of the podcast out for not remembering records and bands.
Just put up the artwork.
Yeah,
over us not remembering what it is.
Yes, that record like really opened things up for me. And yeah, Octavarium was great too because it was more song oriented. Like they had more hooks in their music compared to some of their more shreddy records.
It was accessible. That's the thing that happens with metal bands. There's like a point where they reach commercial success is usually the one that's like the more accessible record. That's like remember the hooks and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but there's some really proggy stuff on that record still, nonetheless. Well, cool, man. Like, what year did you move to Nashville, and like, did you have a musical project before Proteus, or did you bring Proteus to Nashville with you, or how did all that work?
Okay, I moved here in 2012, so I did a year at Appalachian State, transferred to Belmont in 2012 for my sophomore year, and 2012 is really the year that Proteus was like birthed, I guess. Before that, I was just kind of doing just kind of little projects on my own of like exploring production stuff, really. Like I did a lot of like cover stuff, mostly just for myself, but I had a lot of friends in Charlotte in high school that we'd, just get together and set up in my living room and record a full band, like a few songs or a jam session or whatever. But that was just me. Really, I'd look back on it like I was just learning how to produce stuff or how to record stuff on my own. So I finally started having an idea of what I would want a band that I started to sound like when I moved here. And it was essentially just prog rock plus electronic music because I was also getting into like kind of left of center EDM things at that point.
Cool.
But I didn't know, I still don't really think I'm a songwriter necessarily. Like I enjoy being in a writing room and like writing with other people, but by myself, I don't often write stuff start to finish. So I just had a sound that I wanted and I had no idea how to make songs for it essentially.
Yeah.
So a friend of mine that I met that first semester at Belmont, Paul, he and I started just like, we hit it off. We just had similar interests. He liked Coheed and Cambria and, prog rock stuff, but he also loved EDM things and he was trying to be an EDM producer. And so we just collaborated on like 3 or 4 songs and one of them ended up being a song. No, 2 of them ended up being a song on the Proteus record when it finally came out. And it was that process that I kind of figured out how to do the thing that I had been hearing in my head, I guess. This is a long answer to a simple question, but
no, that's fine.
And then the second half of that was I like I said with the Coheed thing, I resonate with songs that are about a story or telling a story, not in like the country music way, but like in a grand epic scale of either this is a really long song that's got multiple movements of, you're following a story along, or it's, a concept album kind of thing. And so I was reading, I've always loved Greek mythology, and I was reading Prometheus Bound in a book of Greek plays that my grandma gave me. She was an English major, so she had all that stuff. And
I was wondering where the interest in making a concept album about Greek mythology, where that came from. So it came from your grandmother?
Yeah. Well, she gave me that, book of 10 Greek plays, and I was reading Prometheus Bound in it. And I got to the end and was like, cool, I want to know what happens next, because it ends with kind of a cliffhanger. And I looked it up because it wasn't in that book, and I realized the other 2 parts of a trilogy are lost to the ages. We don't know what the next 2.
So it's a trilogy, but we've never found like the
right. Those are they're gone. We don't
documents.
Maybe we'll find them someday, but they're in the Library of Alexandria or something when it burned. Something like that. So I was like, well, I want to know how it ends. Maybe I just have to like write my own version of that, of like how it ends. So I started just cranking away on I had a bunch of ideas immediately, and I started writing out this story and like all these notes and coming up with like character backgrounds and doing all this research. And next thing I knew, I had like what could be a like full on, like, I mean, I guess a movie or a like short forms TV series or something. And I was like, okay, this is what Proteus is. Well, it wasn't Proteus at that point. It took me like 5 years to name the band, but I wrote the story and I was like, this is what the sound is going to be applied to, is this story. I just need to figure out how to make it into songs. So
that's amazing, man.
That's how it happened.
You're like the only person that I know that would put that all together. That would actually like bring real literature into their music.
I'm a nerd through and through.
It's impressive, man. Gosh, that's good, man. So that's Proteus Promethea 1 Arrival.
Yeah,
is the name of that record, and
yes,
it's a 16-track album.
Hour and 15 minutes. Yeah,
it's an hour and 15.
Yeah, with almost no interludes. It's kind of
there's no like filler tracks, really.
No,
they're all songs.
You may listen to it and think there's some filler stuff that could be cut, but it was all serving the story to some degree.
Gosh, what an epic project. That's a huge work. I really love substantial art, in the sense that like it's not a 4-track EP and it's not a 33-minute album.
Yeah,
I like
same way.
to be able to chew on some content and really delve into it. And I think that's why I liked Dream Theater.
Yeah.
And I've always kind of gravitated towards things that kind of challenge you as a listener, and maybe that's why I love brutal death metal and like just violent music.
Yeah.
But I like the challenge of trying to figure out like what's happening in the music, what's happening lyrically, what the artist is singing about. So that record, listening to that, was actually what made me want to hire you to do the Zaphon record, because of like the three-dimensionality of the mix, the use of reverb, and just the overall clarity of that record. I was like, if this guy can do this, he's gonna really augment my music, and you did, man. Like,
good.
You did an awesome job.
Yeah, it was. I mean, honestly, that record was so fun to mix. Yours was.
Oh, thanks.
The Proteus album was like a trial by fire in a lot of ways for me, because it was so it's really dense. There's a lot of production stuff going on, and I think it forced me to grow a lot as a mix engineer, because I didn't make it easy on myself. I just, there's a ton of tracks and there's a ton of layers, and I felt like I wrestled it to the ground for like 6 months. And I look back on it and like, I know things that I would do differently now, because I think I've grown a lot in the past 4 years since then. But man, it was an awesome learning experience.
Would you say that that's like the record you cut your teeth on mixing wise?
Yeah, it was that. And then for 2 years leading up to that, I had been working on like sync licensing tracks, which unlike anything else I'd worked on up to that point, required like quick turnarounds. It was 2 tracks a week on average is what I was doing. And so you don't get to sit and labor over a mix. When like I was working full time at Gibson, and then in the afternoons, evenings, I would make a track and try to get 2 done a week. So
wow,
that was also just like it taught me to be more efficient and to be more decisive in what I was doing. But then the Proteus album was a lot more meticulous. But I learned a lot more of what not to do, because I would mix a track and then I'd get to the end and be like, I've been fighting this element the whole time, and go back and like change it, and then the whole thing opens up, and that kind of thing was a huge learning curve.
Mm-hmm.
That I had never made something from scratch to the final product before to that degree, so
yeah,
that took a lot.
Dude, your mixing is impressive, man, and you're very methodical with how you do things. And I from what I've witnessed from you, you know what all the different knobs do on a plugin. Like you take the time to like figure out how everything works. Yeah. Where I'm the kind of guy that's like, all right, we got to get this song out. Like just slap a plugin on there, and I mean, I know some things, and I've learned some things along the way, but you are like fully immersed in the craft.
I'm an anti-preset guy.
That's amazing.
That's a hill I will die on. Is I am all about learning how to use the thing instead of opting for a preset to save me time, because I want to know why it works.
Yeah.
Not just that it does work. I want to know, what the thing is doing to get the result that I want. Because like presets are cool if they get you what you want, but they don't always do that. And sometimes I think it's just better to learn why,
Yeah. Well, you mix heavy music, and
mostly just yours.
Well, you've mixed my record, which is a kind of blackened death metal record with harsh vocals. And then you also have Spice Garden, which is a genreless kind of music project.
Yeah.
But recently you guys have been putting out some really heavy stuff. Is that also with Paul Mayo?
That is with
from
Paul.
Proteus.
So yeah, Paul kind of dropped out of like being super involved with Proteus after those first few songs. Like he kind of would give me ideas here and there. Like he plays, if there's synth solos, that's Paul playing those on that album. But he's been he moved to Maryland. He's at University of Maryland. He's getting his second doctorate right now. So he's like,
oh my gosh,
he's been busy,
What's his doctorate going to be in?
His first one is hearing and speech science. I wish I could tell you exactly what in that he's doing. He's doing a lot of research on hearing aids and cochlear implants and stuff like that. So yeah, that's his focus. But so he when he moved, and then COVID happened, he couldn't go to school for a while, and he was kind of stuck at home and really bored. So we hadn't worked on anything in a while, and he was just like, I started 4 songs this week. And so he just, we went back and forth, and that was our first Spice Garden EP. And we've just kind of inconsistently kept that up since then. Like we always have something going. Like right now, I think we have 3 EPs and an album that are, 4 EPs and an album that are in process. Like 3 of them are almost done. I have an idea, and it's like it won't fit Proteus, so I'll just make it a Spice Garden thing.
And the Spice Garden stuff is sweet, man. The song I really love is Magnitude 10.
Yeah,
that is a heavy banger of a track. Dude.
I think that's the heaviest song on that EP, and it's in drop D. It's just it's on a Telecaster in drop D.
Dude, where is all the subharmonic stuff coming from? Like on
fuzz.
That track,
it's a fuzz
guitar.
Yeah, it's like an octave fuzz. Yeah.
Is it the Dominator pedal or did you opt with a different fuzz?
So that's actually the Archetype Rabia plugin from Neural DSP. It's got the only good fuzz emulation I've ever heard in a plugin is in that plugin. And I wasn't thinking about using any fuzz on that EP when I started doing it. And I started that song and found a preset that had like the awful dissonance when you I
love it, man. That's my favorite like type of fuzz.
Yeah.
Maybe a second to Big Muff, but Lone Wolf Audio has a pedal called the Dominator. It's basically an FZ2.
I don't think I had that yet when I wrote.
Gotcha.
I don't think. Yeah, but
I've always loved the octave fuzz, and I was working on a Doom EP where every song had octave fuzz, and I was playing 8-string tuned down and stuff like that. But I love Magnitude 10 because like you hear this fuzz and you're like, what is about to happen? And then freaking beat drops and it earthquakes your whole car. Yeah. So yeah, check that track out. And then there's some other heavy ones kind of around that release. So what can we expect next from Spice Garden? More heavy stuff or more synth stuff? Or?
That depends on what we finish first. If we don't finish anything before the end of the year, it'll be our next Christmas EP, which is like a Christmas lo-fi.
Okay.
So yeah,
Some warm and cozy.
we've done 2 Christmas EPs so far, so this will be the 3rd installment. Yeah, it's all cozy Christmas. Which Valerie's gonna sing on one of the tracks, which will be super fun.
She's got such a beautiful voice. That's your wife, right?
Yes.
Just checking. You can hear her sing on the Proteus tunes as well.
Yes, if there's a female voice, that's Valerie singing.
Yeah, she is very like crisp and clear, angelic kind of sounding voice.
Yeah, that's for sure. And she plays the flute on any of that stuff that's got flute on.
I love that stuff as well. Is that you singing throughout that record, or is there another
on the
vocalist?
Proteus one?
Yeah.
It's half of it's me. Well, I'd say more than half of the male vocals are me, and then the rest of them are Mitch, our bandmate. He's actually the one who kind of saved that album in a lot of ways. So that record took 8 years to make because I couldn't keep consistent people in the group. So
story of my life, bro.
That's trying to be in a band. But Mitch came in. I knew him from we just went to college together, but he was in other bands that were not at all like Proteus. Like Staying for the Weekend was his band in college. It's kind of indie rock kind of stuff, shoegazy, I guess you could say. And I just loved his writing, and so I asked him to be a part of it, and he saved that record. Really, he wrote the rest of the songs that we had, like 5 at that point, and he wrote the rest of the 16 that have lyrics. And then Valerie joined shortly after that, and that's when I actually first met her, and she helped refine some of the lyrics and vocal ideas and stuff like that. And
that's cool.
Yeah. So, like I guess 10 of the songs Mitch wrote basically from nothing. I gave him the story and the instrumental, and he wrote a song in like 15 minutes. Dude. It was that kind of thing. So yeah.
I think my favorite song on that record is Merciless. Did you write that particular one, or was that Mitch?
That's Mitch writing that one. He also sings that one.
Okay.
So that's him.
Yeah, that song hits so hard. It's so good, man.
Yeah, that one, writing the riff for that took a long time to like. It was very lame and very different before in its initial state. Maybe I'll share that with you at some point. So
does Proteus have plans for putting out any new music?
Yeah. Well, they're kind of loose plans, but so I've written the story for the whole second album. I honestly have about a 5-album arc written out.
Okay. Is this Arrival 2?
Yes. Well, this would be Promethea 2, whatever the subheading would be. So that one's written out, and we've written maybe 6 songs, I would say. And actually, I just started doing demos recently. So we have 2 songs kind of roughly sketched out. So yeah, that's that. I've written like, I think 120-page script.
Oh my gosh,
for the story.
Man.
So that's what I write that all out, and then that's what we pull for
lyrics from.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool.
That's what helped Mitch write all the other songs. Is I would write a chapter of the story and send it to him, and be like, it's for this instrumental, and he would read the story. Right.
There's a lot that you could do with that, whether it be cartoons or artwork or music video series. There's a lot of interesting directions you could go at. Books.
Yeah, I actually recently started a novelization of the first part story. So the first album story, I've started doing like a novel style writing of it, but that'll probably take a little bit. But I'm trying to crank through it. And
dude, it's tough to do creative work in the midst of, I know you're a father, you mix tracks for other people constantly. It's hard to put music out. And in some ways, like I was thinking about like earlier today, like I had this thought like, what if we lived in a world where like creativity was encouraged more, like creating, and then people got like really stoked on what other people were making and like encouraged each other more rather than it being this like popularity contest and continual content train, you know?
I think we're maybe getting closer to that again. Social media doesn't really help when like algorithms are biased towards engagement and stuff like that. Obviously, when ad revenue is involved, it doesn't really help things. But I do think that the industry is more democratized than it was. Yeah, like when we were kids.
Yeah, it was more about like curators and like an executive kind of taking a chance on a band or seeing some promise.
And it was harder to find stuff. It was, radio was the only way. And so, or like early internet,
record stores, older brothers, older sisters or whatever.
So I think there's obviously a lot more people making music now than there were, 15 years ago, but that doesn't, so I think there's more ability to get stuff out there, but it's so hard to make people find it.
Yeah.
Find the people who are actually going to be excited about it. But I do think it's possible now. It's cool that we get to make music independently and not have to have a record deal to do it, I think. Although, like, living in the 70s with, under Rush's kind of deal where it's like, just make an album a year. That's what you do. And
you go out and tour it.
Yeah, the record company is more or less cool with whatever you turn in, like they're going to put it out. That's cool too. But
yeah. What's the Rush album that like tanked really bad? Caress of Steel?
Caress of Steel, which I think honestly is a banger, but it's got like one track on it that I'm not crazy about, but the rest of it's pretty solid.
Yeah. I haven't delved into that one. There's a few Rush albums that I've like listened to all the time, but that is not one of them.
From that album through basically through Moving Pictures is just like an insane run of albums for them. Like it's crazy when you think about they were doing at least one of those a year. From Caress of Steel through Moving Pictures was
remarkable.
Just like the output and like how much good stuff there is in those records.
And their last stuff, is it Clockwork Angels?
Clockwork Angels, yeah.
That song rules, man. Mm-hmm. It's so beautiful. Yeah. Like, what a journey of a song that is.
They never quit, man. They were
just so good.
Yep.
Well, I wanted to talk about your mixing, man, because I think some people that are watching this, they might be looking for a mixing engineer. Maybe you can impart some wisdom upon people that are trying to do what you do. But like, walk us through how you got really into mixing. And I know you worked at a studio for a time, and not only do you mix metal, but you're really good at mixing pop and country and some of the more popular genres, I guess. And I also want to know, like, how do you handle like a metal mix versus how you handle like a pop mix? And you can answer those questions in any order that you want, man.
I'll answer the thing about like how I learned how to do it first. I kind of just did it out of necessity, really. I wanted to be kind of the all-in-one artist, like I wanted to have my project, which ended up being Proteus, and I wanted to be able to do everything myself, start to finish, and just be able to like kind of micromanage the thing. I guess you could say that, but it's really like that project's that's my baby, so part of doing it from start to finish is having to mix it myself too. And so I just I just had to figure out what I was doing in the process. That's why I went to school for audio production and not for an instrument, is because I knew that I could get to the point that I wanted to be at on my instrument, at least to get the music that I wanted to make out. Like I realized I'd be missing out on, being a virtuoso or something like that in that time frame. But I just figured this technical side of things will serve me and the thing that I want to be able to do in a way that, you know, taking guitar lessons or like being a guitar performance person wasn't going to. So yeah, I focused on that in my schooling. I had a really awesome professor for both for tracking and for mixing, Joe Baldridge.
It's at Belmont?
This was at Belmont. And he had an awesome way of teaching. I don't know, I'm using the past tense. He still teaches there. But,
that's all right.
He imparted on me a really awesome like mentality for approaching mixing and just music creation in general. But yeah, like I said before, like I didn't really, I learned a lot about mixing in the years after school of just like having to finish tracks and send them to people for publishing stuff. So yeah, that's that. How do I handle different genres? Really, it's all just kind of the same thing. Figuring out what's important, like prioritizing things, I guess. And all musicians are going to prioritize stuff differently. I'm a guitar player. You would think I would prioritize guitars being loud, but I actually really love drums the most. So I prioritize drums. So usually if anyone tells me to turn anything down, it's like a kick drum or a snare or something.
Yeah, I think I had you turn the snare down because it was just cutting through too good.
Yeah.
I was like,
that's usually how it goes. So yeah, but anyway, the goal is to not bias myself too much on genres and to just, you know, decide, okay, this is a singer-songwriter thing. The vocal needs to be really prominent and it needs to be clear, and you know, what instrument is supporting the vocal best and how can I get stuff out of the way to support the vocal and like what's going to serve the song. And hopefully the song's produced well, and a lot of the times I'm mixing stuff that I've produced. So hopefully I did a good job and I made it easy on myself to mix afterward.
Is there like a certain style of music that you maybe prefer mixing more than others, or do you maybe have like a dream artist that you would want to work with on a project?
I don't know that I have a preference. There's some stuff I enjoy producing more. Mixing wise, it's kind of like a utilitarian thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got its own like art craft kind of thing to it too, but yeah, I don't know. All of it's just kind of satisfying. You know, it's like pressure washing videos or something like that, where it's just like hearing the stuff in its raw format and getting it to where it all is kind of gelling together better. It's just like a satisfying thing to do no matter what genre. So it's just kind of like cleaning up something that's messy. I don't know how else to describe it.
Yeah. You're just going in there and making it so the song is the most listenable as it can be.
That's the goal. But yeah, there's some stuff that I enjoy producing and stuff that I would rather not do as much of, but
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everybody's got those preferences. You worked with an R&B artist named Ray Curenton.
Yeah.
How did you meet him, and how did you get involved with mixing his music? And then did you produce those songs as well, or was that from him?
Yeah, that's so he was Paul's Spice Garden Paul. He was Paul's RA their first year Paul's first year in college, so Ray was his RA. And they connected over music because he knew that Paul was an aspiring producer and Ray was looking for a producer at that time for the album he was working on. So Paul produced a record for him, and I kind of came in on I played guitar on songs, and I helped with some of the production stuff when it was getting finished up. Helped with some of the mixing. Oh, really? I was emotional support for Paul for the mixing process. It took a long time. So that's how I got kind of involved with Ray. And when the time came for him to work on the most recent album he released, he reached out to both of us, knowing that I was still in town. Paul wasn't. But just like, hey, would you guys want to work on this with me? I need, producer to come in and like polish up stuff. He honestly, Ray, like is kind of a co-producer on all of his stuff
Mhm.
because he built a lot of the tracks out himself, and I just kind of, added instrumentation or cleaned stuff up or whatever. And Paul ended up not having a whole lot of time to do that because, getting a doctorate is kind of time consuming.
For sure.
So I ended up doing all the production with Ray on that and tracking all the vocals with him. And I didn't mix the whole thing. I mixed maybe 4 or 5 of the songs. And I didn't master it, but I did really, I guess, do all the production, alongside Ray. So
it's really well done. And I really like Ray's music because it's like really positive.
Yeah.
And I feel like in maybe rap and R&B and in some of those styles, the music can be kind of lewd, but his isn't.
Yeah.
And it's like
it's uplifting.
It's very uplifting, and it made me feel good after I listened to it.
His roots are in, like, he sang in gospel choir growing up as a kid.
I could hear some of that.
And he brings so much, like, more than just like the vocal chops and stuff. He brings a lot of that kind of, I guess, perspective. You want to say it into the way he writes stuff.
For sure.
It's always, more or less uplifting, or even if there's something that he sees as a problem that he's writing a song about, it's in a constructive way. He's just a very, positive, caring person.
Yeah.
So
I really like the song Stars.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a song about, like, waking up in another day and you're kind of having to, like, work against all of this negativity in the world. But I particularly liked it sounds like a classical guitar is on
with
that
the capo.
song. And earlier today you were telling me, like, oh, I actually played that part. So how did you play that? Like,
oh man,
like, it sounds very non-standard for a guitar.
Yeah. Well, so the thing with Ray is he, until recently, didn't play guitar, and I'm not sure what his, like, theory training is at all. I know that he plays keys, and that's the way he arranges most of his songs when he writes them, at least up until recently. And so that one he wrote with a nylon guitar sound in Logic, but using a keyboard, and he's just blocking out chords while he...
So he's a keyboard player.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if he would call himself that, but that's
vocalist.
how he writes his songs, So he sent me the demo session for it, and I listened through it, and I was like, okay, so you want this to be classical guitar? Cool. And then I started trying to figure out how to play it, and it's just like, dude, this is not normal kind of intervals or voicings for guitar. This is really awkward to play. And so, but I really liked what he wrote, so it's not something that I would have written, it's not something a guitar player would write necessarily because of the way it's played. So, I just had to sit down with it for a few hours and kind of transcribe it and figure out how to make it fit on a guitar in a comfortable way.
Sometimes that's how the best guitar stuff happens.
Yeah.
When you learn piano content or stuff that's played out by another instrument.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
It's just amazing how it can make you sound different, and it makes you play non-guitar like things, which enhances the music overall, I think.
Yeah, well, I mean, as a guitar player, you kind of can get stuck, well, any instrument, but guitar, you can get stuck in kind of the guitar shaped box, the caged box or whatever it is, where you just kind of stick to playing stuff because it's really comfortable on guitar and it makes sense intervallically or whatever. That's why I like playing in different tunings is cool for a lot of people. Like, that's, math rock just exists because alternate tunings exist,
Twinkle core.
Yeah, because
right?
it just gets you into a different headspace, and it forces you to, think about intervals differently and chord shapes and stuff like that.
Yeah, I discovered open E tuning in like 2012, and then I immediately wrote like a record. Like, a whole record came out from that. There's other tunings on that record, but it's for my band Mirror, which you'll be mixing the next record that comes out, which doesn't have any open E on it, ironically enough, but I put like a low bass E string, and that was like my gent string, and then I had the open E tuning for the rest of the strings. But yeah, it's amazing how tuning can really inspire some new ideas. I think I got a lot of those ideas and kind of the whole aesthetic type of guitar playing from Khaki King. I was like really into her for several years, and I was like, I could do this alternate tuning thing.
Right. Yeah.
And then the American football record too. The first one that opened it up for everybody. I think
mine was like Toei or Toe, whatever. The Japanese math rock band.
Oh, I'm not familiar with them.
Yeah, they have I can't remember what the record's called.
What's the band called? Toe?
Toe, yeah. It's spelled like Toe, but I don't know if that's actually how you're supposed to say it. But yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, they have, all their albums are cool, but yeah, it's lots of, it's like kind of weird tunings and math rock, guitar craziness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I liked some of that stuff. I didn't go all in that, but that was popular when I was in college, big time. So, I wanted to like pick your brain on Spotify playlists because I feel like you know a lot about that. And how are you using Spotify playlists and that technology to like get your music out? And do you feel like it's this gamified weird thing, or do you think it's like a fair deal that Spotify has set up for artists?
Well, I don't know that I've figured out the playlist thing necessarily. It is definitely a game kind of thing. It's a game. Yeah.
Okay. That's what I thought.
It's, there's free and there's paid ways to like submit to playlists. And there are curators who that's just what they do is people submit stuff for their playlist that they do, and they hopefully have a lot of listeners, and like a daily playlist or playlist push or submit hub, like that kind of stuff.
Okay.
The only time I've ever really had success doing that was for the Spice Garden EP, the Friends EP that we had, where it's we had featured artists on each song, and that we wanted to kind of push that one a little bit more, just because we had people write lyrics and lend their vocals to us, so we were like, we need to do it right.
Okay.
Like actually try, because normally we don't do a whole lot of promotion for that stuff because it's mostly for us more than anything else. So we just, honestly, me and the girl who was on the first song that we released from that EP, she does playlist stuff all the time. Like that's her, like half of what she does for music is she writes songs and records them, and then she does playlist promotion. So she and I kind of worked out a strategy, and we've submitted to different playlists at the same time, like working collaboratively together. And that song did okay, but because we had gotten on enough playlists with that one, it broadened our listener base. And so when the next single came out, it like skyrocketed. Like the first song got, like 2,000 or 3,000 plays in a couple weeks, and that was cool. Like that was the best we'd ever done. And then because enough people had heard that first one, when the second song came out, we got to like 15,000 plays in a month, which is unheard of for anything that we do. And that one I didn't even do as much. It just got more reach algorithmically because the first one had gotten playlists. So that's pretty much all I know. I haven't been able to replicate it since then.
All I knew what to do with, was download Spotify for artists, and then like a few weeks before your music goes live, like press the pitch to playlist button or whatever, and I got put on a couple of them, but it really just one of our songs for Zaphon has a significant amount of plays. I think we're over 1,000 on every track on the record, but there's one that got playlisted on a decent size playlist, and then that's the one that everyone listens to, which is the last track on the record. Ironically enough,
a killer track,
which is like a doom. It's like awesome. Our most doomy song. So I feel like people think we're like a doom metal band, but
and then
you're
they
missing
listen
the
to
fast
rest of
stuff,
it.
man. Yeah. Missing all the speed.
What's the thing that I noticed is that if I didn't focus on like the high listener count playlists, I got on them easier for one thing, because it's like there's lower stakes and you can get on way more of them.
Yeah.
And that stuff kind of aggregates. It adds up. The more, 100 tiny playlists versus one massive one can make a difference.
So you're saying rather than banking on getting on the
editorial
big ones, try to find some other small ones that have some traction and kind of build from there.
That's the only way we got anything done on ours. And like I said, I haven't been able to replicate it since then, but that time it worked.
It's kind of a crapshoot sometimes with social media and stuff like that. And the last podcast that I filmed was with Sammy Slam Dance, who is very different from you, by the way.
Yeah.
But he knows a lot about social media, and he's like, man, a lot of the time it's just continually doing. A lot of the time it's just continually putting out content and just seeing what sticks. Like, that's the game.
Yeah, that makes me tired to think about.
It's very tiring.
It's like against everything that my
we
personality
want to make
is.
a piece of art that we're proud of, and then figure out a way to kind of like market that to the people who might want to listen to it.
Which is the market's not really set up for that anymore.
Yeah.
But I mean, there are people who care and do like that. Like, I'm like you. I'm personally like against playlists. Like, I hardly listen to. I mean, I don't listen to really any playlist anyone else makes. Like, sometimes I have my like era, like my 80s playlist or whatever. But I made that. Most of the time, I just like to listen to an album.
Yeah, I'm an album guy too.
Yeah,
very much so. And a lot of the time when I'm using Spotify, it's simply someone told me a band to listen to, and then I'm like, wait, how do you spell that weird death metal band name? And then I like spell it out,
can't read
and then
their
it comes
logos.
up. Yeah, and then okay, now I'm listening to that band, but it's usually by recommendation. So, but I mean, I'm a product of like the 90s, so I think a lot of younger folks today are probably just playlist searching and trying to find stuff and letting the algorithm dish them songs, which I've done that as well, and it's amazing. You can discover some cool stuff that way.
Absolutely.
So some of the technology, I feel like I get really negative about algorithms and things like that, but it can help you find more of what you like.
Yeah, when it works the way it should, when it's actually serving up things that you otherwise wouldn't hear, that's when it actually is. I find it useful. But when it's just showing me the thing that's popular that everyone else is listening to, that a label's backing and like trying to push as far as it can, then I get like a weird feeling in my stomach. And I feel like this algorithm's being manipulated a little bit, and I don't like that. I want it to work the way it's supposed to. So
I find it frustrating sometimes, like when I hear about a band that maybe gets a lot of traction because they made a comedy reel. But as I kind of like research that more, I find that that's kind of the exception and not the rule. And I don't think it's really worthwhile if you take your art seriously, which I'm a Enneagram 4, so I take it way too seriously. But I think if you take your art seriously, you shouldn't necessarily like think that that's the method for how people are going to find your stuff. I think consistency, putting out music, creating with what you have,
and authenticity.
Then being authentic, absolutely.
At least that'll get you the people that actually care. I think authenticity is the reason why people stick around and have favorite artists.
Yeah, or they like one or two songs from the first record, and then this person put out a new record, I'm going to check it out, and they get more of what they're into. So I wanted to ask you about books, but maybe is that something you're interested in talking about? Yeah. So one of the other things I love about you, man, is you're a real intellectual. Okay, and I know there's pseudo intellectuals that I've met, and I feel like that's common in the metal world. Sorry to throw the whole metal world under the bus, but there's a lot of pseudo intellectuals in metal. But I feel like you're one of the real ones, and I think it's because you're so well read. And I I feel like you have the ability to like read a dense book and then kind of make a mental summary of it, or at least in our conversations, I've noticed that you have that ability even more so than I could. And that's why I value our friendship and things like that. But how did you come to that point in your life? Like, did you always love to read?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So you've just been an avid reader since you were a kid?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I couldn't get enough books when I was a kid. Yeah, to the point that like my sister and I would have like a book series that we were both reading was, you know, maybe coming out, and I would get the first read and I'd finish it on a sit down and read it all on a Saturday, give it to her. Wow. She'd read it on Sunday, you know. We were that kind of like bookworm.
Wow.
Yeah, I've always loved you know, detailed, dense fantasy and sci-fi and stuff like that. Like Tolkien is my hero.
I know you're Lord of the Rings buff big time.
Yeah, so yeah, that tells you enough about me liking dense.
Well, that's some of the best stories ever written, man.
Yeah. So yeah, I just enjoy that stuff, and then I think there's so much truth that can be shared in that kind of writing. Like I mean, I love philosophy and philosophical writing and, you know, nonfiction stuff too, but there's something about really well-made fiction that can convey true things in a way that normal, like, nonfiction language can't as easily.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. One of the things that blew my mind, like we were in a book club for about a year, I think it was, and we basically read a book a week, and it was very difficult for me. I had a lot of trouble keeping up, but just being a part of that, it literally changed my life. You know, it made me a better reader. I could sit down and hear from other people who had been reading the same book, and it was a powerful experience for me. But one of the things that blew my mind about fiction is that you can say things in fiction that might be true in the real world and kind of conceal them.
Faction is what it's
to
called.
get some information across. And I was like, because I kind of avoided fiction altogether, because I was like, I don't want to waste my time reading a bunch of fake stuff. I want to learn about what is real in this world. But learning about that was amazing. Like it totally paradigm shift level stuff. So,
well, that's interesting. I mean, there's two kind of approaches, I think, fundamentally of fiction, where some people go to fiction for escapism of they want to get away from reality. And
like,
so
Twilight and 50 Shades of Grey type
fiction.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like
that whole kind of world.
Something that you can relate to enough, but it's just an escape, right? You're tired of the world right now. You want to go to a different land for a little while and experience that. And then there's, and some authors might write things for that purpose. But there's the side of fiction like you're describing, where it's truth that's being distilled and like conveyed in a way that's allegorical or whatever, where it's not being directly stated flat out, but it's like infused into the work. And that's kind of Tolkien's thing, right? Like he was a devout Catholic, so all of his writing had a Catholic kind of worldview, even though he really did not, like, he hated allegory, apparently. Like, he just did not ever want to make anything like, this is a metaphor for this. But his worldview inevitably influenced the way he wrote about good and evil and, you know, things like that. So, and he conveyed really deep truths about the way he saw the world, the real world, through the way that he developed the world of Middle Earth. So, yeah. And I find a lot of, like, joy in discovering that kind of stuff. So, yeah.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I'm excited to potentially read your Prometheus book, man. Like whenever that comes out. Thanks. That would be fascinating to check out. currently I'm reading Out of the Silent Planet by C.S. Lewis.
Cool.
And I have like all three books in one book. It's a big fat boy.
Yeah.
But I'm really looking forward to getting to That Hideous Strength, because I've heard that there's some really amazing things in that book.
I've never read
Have
that
you
one.
read all those? Dude, Out of the Silent Planet is amazing book, man. This world that C.S. Lewis, his character Ransom is on, it's totally unique, and I think it was groundbreaking for its time. It's my understanding of it.
I've only heard good things. I mean, I really want to.
Yeah,
that's on my list. You know.
Oh, it's so good, man. And C.S. Lewis is a Christian, or was a Christian. So it's interesting to see some of those ideas and how they come through in his writing, but it's not an explicitly Christian writing. He has those.
He's a little bit more not on the nose. That's not the nicest way to say it, but like he lets it leak through a little bit more than Tolkien does. I would say, like especially in Narnia. It's like Narnia's very obviously got a lot of allegory in it, but Tolkien didn't do that quite as much. But yeah.
Another one that I want to get into is Philip K. Dick. He's got a lot of like Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? I have never read that book, but that's kind of on my list. But do you have any favorite sci-fi writers that you would recommend to people listening?
Well, you could let's see, sci-fi
or fantasy. You can go fantasy.
Philip K. Dick is one of the greats for a reason. That's probably who I'd go with. Yeah. Without thinking too much more. I mean, I haven't read enough Frank Herbert to know, but I have a feeling that when I get deeper into Dune that he might take that top spot for me.
Oh yeah.
But I'll report back on that.
Yeah, I've got a copy of Dune right here actually. Which I've watched the movies. I haven't read the book cover to cover. I've read like a couple chapters. But it's amazing the world that he's created.
Tolkien is definitely my favorite for fantasy, of course. I'm reading a Lovecraft collection right now. That's awesome. I'd never really read much Lovecraft outside of a couple short stories here and there, which I guess that's really all he ever wrote. But I finally got through the Call of Cthulhu.
Yeah, I was going to say, have you read that one?
Yeah. So that's been really fun to dig into.
How would you like compare his writing to like Tolkien?
Oh, I mean, very, very different.
Totally different.
Because Lovecraft is very he does a really awesome first person perspective when he writes. He's really good at making you like get in kind of the headspace of the character that's telling the story. And that I think that's where the really unsettling aspects of his writing come in, where it's just like this dread and horror kind of stuff of like you feel empathy for the character who's telling the story in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But man, there's some really crazy, like esoteric, like occultic stuff. Like he obviously read a lot.
I think he was involved in that stuff.
That's also possible. So yeah, there's some pretty insane connections, and also the way that his stories connect from all these different, really tiny ones that seem insignificant connect to the Cthulhu story, or Shadow over Innsmouth is what I'm reading right now. So yeah, there's really cool strands to all of his writing. That's
very cool.
That's cool.
And we can't forget Stephen King. He's got some good ones.
I've read so many Stephen King
you're like
books.
a Stephen King psycho, man. You got like all of them, don't you?
I have most probably. I probably have 90% of his books.
Do you like it the best, or
I haven't read it. I have it, but I haven't read it yet. I did the Dark Tower series. I read The Shining because I love the movie, of course.
Oh, the movie's iconic,
and the book is quite different in a lot of ways, but equally amazing. And that was kind of my step in, and then I knew that he had like his own dark fantasy series, and so the Dark Tower is what I did, and I did the full reading thing of like not just the books, but the additional reading, so you get all the context of characters that show up and stuff. And it's like, I don't know, 15 to 20,000 pages or something like that.
My God.
I read that in like a year. I'm just
to have to edit that would be crazy as a writer. Like and something I've heard about Philip K. Dick is like he didn't really edit a lot of his stuff. He used a stream of consciousness, like right to the page.
You mean Stephen King?
Well, no, I was referencing Philip K. Dick there. I don't know what Stephen King's same way. It's just like, right, yeah. That's fascinating to me.
Yeah. His whole thing is he tries to scare himself with stories. So he starts writing and he's like, what would scare me if it happened next or whatever, like that's a common thing for him, where he kind of describes his writing as like he's uncovering the story. Like it already exists. He's just uncovering it in the process of writing, which I think is pretty novel of an idea. But yeah. Yeah,
good stuff, man. Stephen King has a lot to choose from, man. Yeah. Like in his
he's broad, man. There's
selection, yeah.
You people kind of pigeonhole him as a horror guy exclusively, but he's got a lot more than that. Like The Dark Tower is like, there's some horror elements to it, but I would describe it as being more fantasy.
Yeah.
There's some like kind of sci-fi parts of it too. It's kind of all over the place.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm not familiar with that series.
But they tried to make a like movie series out of it, and that didn't go great.
Oh, really? Turned out really bad? Comical?
Yeah. He's pretty hit or miss for his adaptations. Like there's some awesome Stephen King adaptations and there's some not awesome ones.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's hard to take something like a book and turn it into a movie. I think it's one of the hardest things that you could do, because the human mind can interpret things so many different ways. You're going to read it and it's going to scare you in a different way than me. And that's kind of the beauty of reading, I think, is your own mind can conjure up the image, your own unique images based on what content you're reading, what the sentences are. And
absolutely. And that's part of the thing with like, especially like horror writing to horror movies. It doesn't always translate. It's like the thing that's scary in the book when you're reading it, because your imagination's coming up with it. Like that's why people say that Lovecraft is unadaptable, basically, is because all of the stuff that's scary about his writing is kind of what you can't see. And movies are about seeing things.
It's about seeing spooky things.
And hearing things. So it's kind of hard to translate that over. Some people do a good job, but
I wanted to ask you one more question, Brandon, and I know you've mentioned in the past that you have a like production company that you're trying to start. What all does that entail? Like, what kind of services are you going to offer with that?
Well, it's called Xylon Productions. It's just me. Really.
It's just you right now. Okay.
It's just a way to have a kind of business legitimacy that's not just my name.
For sure.
So right now, all I offer is like consultation, I guess, and then production, engineering, mixing. I can do mastering. I kind of like to send it to other people to do mastering if I'm mixing stuff.
Yeah.
That's a whole other conversation. But
you can master a mix that someone can bring to you.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So kind of anything on the audio production side of things from start to finish of a song. And eventually I kind of want to get into doing more like composition stuff for like film and games and stuff. And then also, I don't know if it'll be the same company or if it's even something that I would like charge people for, but getting into like 3D modeling and 3D cinematics and stuff like that is something I'm really interested in digging into.
Are you going to go the Adobe Atmos route? That's kind of a huge question, but...
Oh, Dolby Atmos, yeah.
Dolby Atmos, sorry. Adobe.
So
my bad.
Yeah, so I can technically mix in Atmos now in my current setup. As far as getting like the full speaker system, it's a pretty big investment to do a 714. system, and have it be something that's high enough quality to translate. So I'm fortunate enough to have a couple friends who do have a full, very, very expensive Dolby Atmos system that I could check stuff on. But right now, I'm kind of limiting it to doing stuff binaurally and checking on a bigger system when I can.
Yeah.
So I can do it.
So you can offer Dolby Atmos to people who you mix, right? Like if you can give them a normal mix, but then you can offer that service as well.
Yeah, that's right. And also, Atmos works in a way that you can deliver the Atmos mix and the stereo mix all in like one package now.
Okay.
I mean, I think that's always been part of it, but so that's actually a super handy thing for me as a mix engineer. As long as the stereo sounds good and the Atmos binaural and everything sounds good, then it's all just one file, which is cool.
That's really cool.
It's a big file, but it's just one.
Yeah. Is that a wave file still, or?
Yeah, it's a multi-channel wave.
Multi-channel wave.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about that, but Brandon does.
I do.
You should hire him.
I do.
So.
I'm actually in the process of remixing the entire Spice Garden discography in Atmos as like that's my way of deep diving into it and just like
just working on your own stuff. What better way?
The process. Yeah. So our early stuff is really hard to translate into Atmos, but I'm getting there, and I think it'll get easier the further on because the production got a little bit more like clean and sorted out. It's got a lot of potential for just like sounding massive. I think your next record, I'll give you a little preview of Atmos.
That would be interesting. Especially for the post-rock thing, I think would translate a lot better in a three-dimensional kind of way.
Just imagine reverbed out guitars in 360.
Oh, I can't wait. That sounds amazing. The other kind of musician in that space, in that kind of post-rock, progressive rock space, would be Devin Townsend. He's deep into the Dolby Atmos.
Yeah,
and I think he's starting to put records out.
All of his stuff moving forward from what's currently, I think he's got 2 singles out from his upcoming album, but from that album forward, he said he's mixing everything in Atmos.
He's fully in, which you just offer people a deeper experience with the music, and I think over time, those speaker systems will come down in price like everything else. And
you can listen. I mean, ideally, if the Atmos mix is good, you can just listen on headphones or like your normal studio setup, and it translates.
Interesting.
That's how it's supposed to work. I'm still figuring that out right now.
Yeah.
But it's possible because I know people that do it, and they're just like, I just do an Atmos mix, and it's also the stereo mix, and it just works right. So
fascinating.
So that's my goal, is to not have to do 2 mixes per song, basically. Which is what some people are doing right now.
Right.
Yeah.
So mixing, mastering, production.
I can do demos,
podcast editing, drum programming, any of that stuff.
Yep. Vocal tuning. I know that's something people hate. I love vocal tuning.
Anything else you want to add to that to let people know what you can offer them?
I can play guitar. Not as good as you, but
wow,
but I can
you play guitar really well, dude.
I can pass. I can do enough to play most genres. So
awesome. Brandon, where can people follow you?
On X. It's hard for me to say that. I want to say Twitter still. On X and Instagram, my handle is @BrandonAdamsJ. You can follow my artist accounts on Spotify, Spice Garden and Proteus. For new stuff, Spice Garden's gonna consistently just be putting out stuff for indefinite amount of time, and Proteus hopefully has a new album before 8 more years pass.
That would be great.
And on, I guess, the Proteus YouTube channel is somehow keeps getting views on one song that I haven't promoted in a long time, but
that's awesome.
When stuff comes out, we'll put it there. So that's official Proteus band, I think, is our @ on Instagram and YouTube and stuff. So yeah,
excellent, man. Dude, it's been awesome hanging out with you.
You as well.
You're the man. You're the mixing man. And I love you, dude. So thanks for being here. Thanks for hanging out with us today, guys. This is Shred Sessions number 9. It's in the books. So if you like the show, like this video first, leave a comment, and I'll see you in the next one.
Tell us what that Dream Theater album is that we forgot about.
Yeah, tell us about that in the comments for sure. Peace.